And just like that, 2020
We're back, baby.
Live draft coverage is underway. I'm your host, Aidan Liquorie. Joining me, as always, Dave Terpoilli. Terp, we're back. I mean, it feels like no time has passed since we were last here, but, time flies.
It feels like we never left. It's crazy that it's almost May and fantasy football is right around the corner. Some of these lunatics have been drafting for months now, since February. It's just insane how fast time flies, and we're back. And this year, we're going to be even better than we were last year. It's going to have a lot of fun, the chat. We just can't wait to get this started.
Yeah, I mean, we got some tech upgrades this year that are already here on the way. We got a bunch of guests planned. Obviously, this show is just going to be me and Terp to kick things off. But throughout the spring, summer, we're going to have a bunch of great guests on to discuss. They may be drafting live. They may be commenting on the draft. And we're going to have a bunch of live draft coverage, even more. We had about 30 last year. We're going to try and keep upping that because this is what the people want. And Terp, let's just get started. I mean, picks are already flying off the board because these guys all came ready to draft. This is in the FFPC Never Too Early Best Ball Tournament. That contest is actually sold out. It is already sold out. This is one of the final drafts in the tournament. It filled about 4 or 5 days ago. Once we kind of put out this push to get it filled for the YouTube. So this is one of the last ones. Picks are flying off the board. We got some heavy hitters here. I know who are drafting. Terp, just early thoughts. Let's just kind of get it started. I know we made some takes. I remember back in our first coverage last year that were on the money. I mean, even back then it was never too early in mid-April, and we were hyping up Tyreek Hill beyond belief. We were low on some guys who worked out. We also had some pretty poor in hindsight takes, but we had some hits there. So early on, kind of first couple rounds, what is just one takeaway you're having? What is one guy maybe you're high on or super low on, or just talk me through this kind of first round and what you're seeing.
The rise of the Atlanta Falcons is pretty much the story of the first round and the turn right here. Bijan Robinson, there's no more Arthur Smith. New offensive coordinator, new coaching staff that plan on getting him the ball a ton. No more annoying Cordarrelle Patterson there to mess things up. London, Pitts, Robinson, this should be their time to really take the next step. Bijan Robinson has number 1 overall upside. I mean, he's going exactly where he should be. He is definitely a target of pretty much anyone right now in fantasy football that's drafted now. I mean, the hype is there. You saw the talent there last year. He just got held back by quarterback play, coaching staffs, and some other things. But this year, wheels up, Bijan Robinson and Drake London, same situation. I mean, you saw what Puka did last year. And Drake London can be that player. So very, very high on the Falcons. And it seems like drafters are just continue to push these guys up. And by the time these drafts get to, August, September, I can see some, number 1 overall Bijan Robinson and Drake London sneaking past A.J. Brown, sneaking past Puka, just with the hype surrounding him. Maybe even sneaking past Garrett Wilson.
The number 1 overall pick, and he's been the number 1 overall pick in this format, pretty consensus, is Christian McCaffrey. We'll be upfront and open from the get-go. A guy who you and me were both not off, but just were not taken when we had the first overall selection last year, was Christian McCaffrey. We were not on him. Age concerns, we had some words.
We paid the price
wrongfully about Elijah
Very
Mitchell and what his role could be. This year, are you changing that, or what are you thinking? You're going to be going into draft soon if you're not there already. Your first overall is Christian McCaffrey your pick, or are you going to go one of the receivers or Brees, or does Bijan, as you said, sneak up to you? Like, who's right now in April your first overall pick?
A mistake I made last year is I didn't get enough exposure of guys like Christian McCaffrey. There's a couple other names we'll mention later, but with the season that he had last year, if you didn't have him and you didn't have him in the playoff run, you pretty much got smoked, or you were way, way behind the 8 ball, because he just single-handedly won games for people. So me picking number 1 now, I will still take Christian McCaffrey at number 1. I won't, if he starts falling a little bit, which I don't think he's going to, I think he's going to be a clear-cut number 1 pretty much all of drafting season. I don't see maybe CeeDee Lamb, maybe Bijan Robinson. I don't see any of these other guys getting up to that level. I mean, is there a chance that he could fall off? Of course. I mean, anything can happen, but San Francisco showed you nothing last year that they wouldn't just continue to feed him the ball. So I'm very, very high on him. I mean, it's hard not to be. If they lose Ayuk, if he gets traded with all the rumors that are going around there, I think that only helps Christian McCaffrey. Hurry another year in that offense. To me, he's the number one overall player. He's definitely not somebody that I'll be fading like I did last year.
And we're, as we said, this draft is already flying. It's exciting. You got guys in new places, new faces, and new places, as they say. I'm going to go to the second round, and we're going to kind of jump all over as we kind of, there's so much to discuss, and over the coming months, we'll really kind of get through all of it. We're not going to be able to talk about everyone today and all, but your Philadelphia Eagles, one of the marquee free agent signings, got Saquon Barkley behind that offensive line. I'm surprised that he's not a first-round pick. I'm just going to be completely honest. I know there's maybe some concern about Jalen Hurts always stealing away goal line touchdowns, but I mean, DeAndre Swift had moments where he looked fantastic last year, and Saquon Barkley is 10 times the running back that DeAndre Swift is. So I just want to hear your thoughts. You're the Eagles guy. That's what you're known for. What are your thoughts on Saquon Barkley, and where should he be going?
I think he's going exactly where he should be going. I don't think he should be higher than he's going, just because of the fact, like you said, Hurts is going to steal some of them, goal line touches. The one positive is they went out and got him. They went out and spent money, which they never do on a running back position. Kellen Moore, what I would call a very good offensive coordinator, is going to figure out ways to get him the ball. The question is, they really have never thrown the ball to their running backs recently. The new Sirianni, Kellen Moore does. Pollard, very good in that offense a couple of years ago. It's a name we're going to try to avoid saying after he kind of smoked this last year. But I'm very, very high on Barkley. I think he's going in a fair spot. I mean, am I taking him over the receivers? As of now, no. Could that change over the summer? Of course. But he's pretty much going exactly where I think he should go. He has very high upside in that offense. That offense should rebound after that disaster of an end of the season, which just brought so many horrors to Philadelphia. Very high on Barkley. Worries me about Hurts, but he's still going to get his. I just don't know if he can get up to first round value and pay that off.
Our good friend of the show, Mac Nova, is in this draft. He was saying he was hoping for Kyren or a top 3 tight end. He was drafting at the 207 right here, and both Kelsey and Kyren fell to him there in the second round. He goes with Kyren Williams. What are your thoughts on Kyren Williams? Probably, I would say, the biggest breakout of last year. I mean, him or Puka, 2 Rams were the biggest
Two of the
surprises.
same guys, same teams, same players on the same team. It's very rare that you see that. I think he's getting drafted pretty much fair to where he should be. I mean, I saw him early on get drafted at the turn, which I think is a little rich. I mean, especially over some of them other guys who are getting drafted there. There's a little bit of a worry because he is not a high pick. He kind of burst on the scene, but he was the only guy, and they fed him the ball a ton. You got a new OC there. Do they still are going to draft a rookie to get in there and touch some carries? Because last year, the one thing about Kyren Williams, and everybody knew in fantasy football that loved about him, was he got every carry, every game, and there was nobody else. And that's rare in fantasy football anymore. You get a guy like that that's going to guarantee touch the ball 20 times a game. You're got a gold mine. So I like him where he's getting drafted. No issues at all, with a player this year. I don't know if I'll have that much of them, but it's a fair spot.
I'm gonna kind of keep it for the most part here in these early with talking about some of these guys who changed teams. So I think, to be honest, that's sometimes the most exciting thing to start with. Josh Jacobs to the Packers was, for me, I think the move that kind of came out of nowhere during free agency. Just no one was expecting that. Obviously, Aaron Jones gets cut, later signs with the Minnesota Vikings. You like that landing spot? I mean, a team that loves to pound the rock. I mean, Josh Jacobs is what now, 2 years removed from he was the leading rusher in the NFL, and slow start last year, but finished largely pretty strong until he got hurt and Zamir White took over. But going in that late second round, he obviously had the contract uncertainty, which really dropped him in drafts last year and his holdout. But I mean, Josh Jacobs with the Packers seems like a great fit. I mean, I'm sure Balky will talk about it extensively throughout the summer, but they didn't sign anyone else. We'll obviously see. We'll talk more about the draft coming up next week, how that impacts it. But Josh Jacobs, I think, is going to be a great value there in that late second round. It's probably the best landing spot that could happen for him.
That's one of the best landing spots that could have happened for him. I mean, Dallas is still out there, and that's a very good landing spot. But with Jacobs, I think, like you said, they gave up on a guy who's been there forever in Aaron Jones, a guy who was beloved in the locker room, and pretty much just said, get lost. I mean, A.J. Dillon's still, around. He's not very good. He proved that last year. I don't think Jacobs is going to get every carry every game. I still think they're going to mix in some of these other guys, probably draft a rookie. But that offense is one of the best offenses of football. You saw the talent that they possessed. Should have beat the 49ers in the playoffs. Jordan Love's only going to take that next step. They got a ton of talent at receiver, young talent, ton of talent at tight end. Great spot for Jacobs. They're going to run the ball a ton. He is a guy that I think by the time the summer moves on will get moved up around the Barkley territory.
A couple of people in the comments talking about Team 3 starts, which you kind of, in this day and age, you don't see it as much, right? The 3 running back start, but
you don't see it at all anymore. Pretty much the 2 mentalities that everybody's talking about. Last year, it was all 0 running back, which worked out a ton. There's the Kyren Williams, the world, and you drafted all these stud receivers. And then there's the anchor running back, which worked out a ton. If you had like a McCaffrey or somebody like that, that's where the issue comes into, is that you got to try to switch your strategies up. Like this year, it seems like early on, quarterbacks are falling a little bit outside the elite guys. Tight ends seem to be moving up, like Kincaid, Pitts. 4th round picks. I know it's the format, but still, is really Kyle Pitts better than DJ Moore or Stephon Diggs? Jury's still out there, but it's still it's a worthwhile gamble at this point.
It kind of feels as though there's a lot that worries me about the Falcons, as exciting as they may be, right? Which is, Kirk Cousins, it's mainly revolving around Kirk Cousins is coming off a torn Achilles. And sometimes we've seen in the past where when you're drafting all these guys, you're looking at now Pitts, London, and Bijan all within the first 4 rounds. Recent history shows that at least one of those guys, there's always one sometimes who doesn't meet their draft expectations or turn back the draft capital, especially when you had 3 guys. Granted, I think we can comfortably blame Arthur Smith and just mismanagement, but 3 guys who just, you're putting a lot into 3 guys who haven't really shown what we were expecting of them at various points. Drake London and Bijan, I think I have a way easier time seeing them.
Couldn't agree with you more.
Kyle Pitts
is still really not shown anything. Talent always finds a way to get on the field. Talent always finds a way to make plays. Coaching staffs and quarterbacks, they can all mess that up. But last year, you saw nothing. Nothing. You saw plenty of flashes from Bijan. You saw plenty of flashes from Drake London. You just never saw from Kyle Pitts. Is that going to happen just because they have a new offensive coordinator, a new coaching staff, a veteran, better quarterback who likes to sling the rock? It's surely possible, but if you're telling me, am I taking Kyle Pitts over DJ Moore, Stephon Diggs, Mike Evans, Metcalf, Kupp, Rice, which obviously he's fallen now because of the off the field stuff? I'm not. Even Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram season last year was one of the quietest seasons you're ever going to have in fantasy football. If you would have told me, looking back after the season was over, Evan Ingram put up the stats that he did, I would say you're crazy. I would take Evan Ingram over Kyle Pitts. I'm not saying I'm fading Kyle Pitts or anything crazy of player hating right now, but he's definitely the question out of the 3 if it was me.
Yeah, I'm just super cautious about Pitts is, I think, the best and most simple way to phrase it. Let's talk about some of these incoming rookie class. And I think, as always, the coolest part of the Never Too Early Best Ball tournament is you can draft the incoming rookie class before you even know what teams they're going to be on. Marvin Harrison has gone at the 212. Malik Neighbors has gone at the 402. If you're looking at their ADP, it's pretty much in line. Marvin Harrison has been going at the 208, so he's a little bit later. And Neighbors has been going at the 403. So roughly in line with what they're going. Terp, I'm just going to say I'm all in, like everyone else, on this incoming rookie receiver class. I think it is going to be a legendary class. Oh, yeah. But, can you go wrong with Harrison or Neighbors? No.
You can't, but the issue with that is, let's just say the New England Patriots decide, hey, we don't want to take a quarterback and we're going to take Marvin Harrison.
Mm-hmm.
That's not good for fantasy football. That's not good for, the turn of a Christian McCaffrey draft. I mean, yeah, will he get his play? But who's playing quarterback there? I mean, there's still that's the stuff where it could really sink you early on. Because is Marvin Harrison one of the most talented receivers to come out in a long time? He sure is. He goes to Arizona, which he's supposed to go, and everybody thinks he's going to go. Wheels up. He'll probably get moved up in drafts. I can see him getting to the turn in some draft. People will be getting crazy.
I think while your situation that you've hypothesized about is the nightmare scenario, I just don't think it's going to happen. I think taking him here is the risk worth taking because he either goes to the Cardinals with Kyler, kind of becomes the instant wide receiver. There's no the farthest he's going to fall is fifth.
It's 4.
So I think fifth. Theoretically, let's say the Cardinals trade down Vikings move up and select JJ McCarthy, which is a front office malpractice, which is another story for another day. Mm-hmm. But let's say he falls to fifth. He's not getting past the Chargers. So you're either pairing him with Kyler.
Are we 100% sure on that? Hardball's a wild card, man. Everybody thinks, hey, they're going to draft a receiver. I don't think they're drafting a receiver. I think they're taking the offensive lineman and I think they're going to keep it moving. I can see them trading out of that pick. It makes all the sense in the world to take Neighbors. Could you imagine Neighbors or Harrison with just Justin Herbert? Everything seems like it lines up, but Harbaugh has not shown me. It just signed J.K. Dobbins today. Gus Edwards. I know they're just, they're plotters and they're not really Dobbins coming off that injury, but it seems like he's trying to build offensive line, running back, that kind of stuff and ignore the receiver position for now, which he's a good coach, but I don't know if that's something you can survive in the NFL like that.
So theoretically, then I think the more realistic nightmare scenario for Marvin Harrison is that he falls to the Giants at 6.
I was going to say the same thing about Neighbors. I mean, Neighbors going to the Giants, Harrison going to the Giants. It's not really the ideal landing spot. So many questions at quarterback there. We don't know if Daniel Jones is going to be ready. It's just, I don't know. I mean, we love the talent of these guys. And like I said, Arizona, if you could tell me you could put Harrison on Arizona and Neighbors on Chargers, wheels up on both of them. They both move up draft boards and everybody's going to be on them. But
I just feel as though the receivers, and I do think Neighbors has some risk baked into a never too early format because his landing spots are a little bit iffier in terms of the quarterback play. Although,
and if you look at the guys who are going right around him, DJ Moore, Caleb Williams can throw the rock, but they also have Keenan Allen, so that's where he's getting baked in because DJ Moore without Keenan Allen is probably up around and a half. Would I think be a fair, guess? But with Keenan Allen and rookie quarterback who's going to have his growing pains is the question. Diggs, same thing. If he's in Buffalo, he's not getting drafted in the 4th round. But being in Houston now, with Tank, with Nico Collins, with Schultz, it's baked in. Mike Evans is the one that surprised me more than anything because what else can Mike Evans do to get drafted higher? Why is he
We'll talk a lot throughout the summer of guys we were right on last year, of which there were many. It was a good year for you and me. A guy McCaffrey, I'm not going to say we were completely wrong on. We were just a little more hesitant and
he's going to fall off the cliff here soon. It's
Mike Evans, though. Mike Evans was the guy I was completely off of, and dude just keeps on churning out production.
Keeps on catching touchdowns, and him and Baker just have a connection.
Yeah,
Baker didn't go anywhere. I mean, it seems like based off looking at this right now, he's definitely one of the guys. Why I'm surprised. Why is he not flipped with Nico Collins? Why is he not flipped with Michael Pittman? Why is he not flipped with Jalen Waddle? Debo, I get. Because, he has that, if Ayuk gets traded, that, nuclear upside. But why is Mike Evans getting drafted there? That's a really solid pick for team. I think it's 6.
Yeah. That's friend of the show, Mac Nova, who's putting together a stellar draft, by the way. Brock Bowers is another. I mean, I could talk about the rookies all day. Brock Bowers is another one in the never too early format. he has probably a range from 5 through 18 in the draft. Do I think he gets to the Bengals at 18? No, but I mean that's a conceivable possibility.
It doesn't seem like to me he's getting past the Jets.
I do. If
Aaron Rodgers is not letting a player like
9,
that get out of his radar. I mean, the Jets have other things they need to worry about, but especially the offensive line. But
I'm taking Brock Bowers, knowing absolutely nothing about where he's landing, above Kyle Pitts, Evan Ingram, and George Kittle without like a second of doubt.
He's everyone but Evan Ingram.
So you're taking Evan Ingram
over Brock Bowers. Just because of the rookie tight end. I mean, he's going to have his growing pains. Like, I know Brock Bowers is a different talent, but look at Evan Ingram's stats last year. What makes you think it's going to get worse? No Calvin Ridley. They brought in Gabe Davis, who,
I think they draft someone.
I think they draft someone too, but who are they in the position to draft that's going to really steal touches from him? Trevor Lawrence has that rapport. I mean, like I said, it was one of the most. Yeah. I look at everybody's stats at the end of the season, and just most of them like, yeah, it makes sense. That makes sense. That makes sense.
Okay, yeah.
If you would have gave me 100 guesses, I would have never thought Evan Ingram had the season he had last year. So to me, losing Calvin Ridley, I'm definitely higher on him, probably the most. Definitely higher on than Kyle Pitts.
Chat, ask questions. I mean, we're in April. Ask any questions you have. Me and Terp will comment our thoughts. We can talk about the ADP where they're going. Henry Muto in the chat asking, when is Derrick Henry going to fall off? He's 30 and still ticking. I'd argue he is falling off, if I'm being honest. I think that he has gotten worse. You're just seeing some underlying trends, but his touchdown volume is still there, and he's still able to piece together some big games here and there. I'm not taking him in the second round. I'm just Terp, I believe you always phrase it. That's a guy, if he beats me, he beats me. And if he's been beating me, not last year, but the idea is like I've been kind of off of him for the last couple of years since this is our third season doing these streams, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy how time flies, as we said. I have been off Derrick Henry, no investment in Derrick Henry for the last 2 years, and it's about to be 3 straight. I understand the Ravens offense is great, but it's just there's so much going against him for his age, how many touches he's had. I'm just going to keep fading him. I know it sounds dumb because obviously, yes, it's eventually going to pay off, but I think you're already seeing some signs. He didn't really deliver last year on a game.
He had his moments. He had his games that were big. I mean, but I agree with you 100%. Like, second round, Derrick Henry's rich for me, man. I mean, do I hate him? No. Could he definitely kill you? But like I've said 100 times, if you fade him, you fade him. If he gets me, he gets me. I mean, there'll be plenty of guys where I'll say that about this year, and most of the guys I said last year, I remember the Kadarius Toney. I don't care where he gets drafted. He could be in the 20th round. I don't want him. Derrick Henry will be a guy that I have a little bit of exposure to. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to full fade the guy, but because I do so many of these drafts, but I don't think there's going to be a chance where he's a second round pick in my book. I mean, there's just too many downsides. They're going to give the ball to some of the young guys they have, and Lamar Jackson's still there, and they have plenty of talent on the outside with Flowers and Andrews. So, to me, I'm not taking Derrick Henry over Josh Jacobs. And, it's just some of those receivers that are going after him. No, thanks.
Dom, I'll get back to your question. I just want to say real quick. Usually when a team's getting a bunch of shtick in the comments, I agree with it. And, sometimes you don't say anything. Sometimes we do. Team 12 is getting some hate. Am I wrong to not mind it? I know we talked about Pitts, and there's a inherent risk there that scares me. But then again, he's going to have by far and away the best quarterback he's ever played with. He's going to have by far and away the best offensive coordinator and coaching staff, just by default, just how bad they were. But I love the A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts stack for as long as they're in Philly. I know A.J. Brown had some issues, but I mean, Eagles fell apart as a team down the stretch. And is it a little concerning that pretty much all those same pieces and leadership is still intact? Yes. But I mean,
with a 99.9% better offensive coordinator who we know likes to chuck the ball, likes to get the ball down the field. That's exactly what A.J. Brown.
People are quick to forget. A.J. Brown was made up. A.J. Brown from what? It was like week 3 to like week 8.
The best player in fantasy football.
Unreal. 150 yards.
Dominating every week in fantasy football. And then the whole team fell off, and he fell off with it. A.J. Brown was number one. You would be having talks right now if things continued of taking A.J. Brown number 1 or 2 in drafts.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, you might be getting them at a value right now if they figure it out. If they figure it out with Kellen Moore, if Jalen Hurts gets out of the funk he was in last year. But like you said, Team 12, Christian Kirk's one of my favorite players in drafts early.
I was about to talk about Christian Kirk. He seems like a great value.
My favorite was because he has that rapport with Trevor Lawrence. Calvin Ridley's not there anymore. He was hurt last year, so obviously he was kind of forgotten about. We all know Gabe Davis is a disappearing act. Does he have some potential? Yeah, of course. But will they draft somebody? Yeah, that's also possible. But we all know that Trevor Lawrence, they signed him to a big contract. 5th round, 6th round, Christian Kirk, sign me up every day, especially as my 3rd receiver. I really like what this team did. They have options down the road. We all know the stacking that I like to do in these tournaments. It's not error-proof. There's been teams that won big money without stacking, so I'm not sitting here saying it's the only thing to do. But a team like this has so many options when it has Kirk Cousins with the 2 Falcons guys. It also has Trevor Lawrence down the road with Kirk, and you pretty much end the quarterback position. So you're going to start drafting running backs soon, but you just stockpile a bunch and hopefully hit a lightning in the bottle like Kyren Williams, and then wheels up for this team.
Let's go real quick. I want to answer Dom's question about Derrick Henry, which is he's asking, what running backs would you take before him? To me, I would probably, it's around Pacheco and Mixon is where I would start personally considering Derrick Henry. I'm not saying maybe that range, but that's the guy. For me, he went as RB9 this draft. In my very early rankings, my thoughts, he's probably closer to that running back 14, 15 range for me.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, Cook and ETN are not guys that early on I'm targeting a ton. I like their spots, but ETN just never seems like he's going to be the favorite in Jacksonville. Like he gets the work and then he kind of fades. Mm-hmm. And there's games when, like we saw last year, he was a monster, and then the whole team just faded out, and he faded with them. And James Cook, same type of situation. He's the guy there now, and everybody thinks he's going to be the guy. But there's no Diggs to take that thing on the outside anymore. So Josh Allen, it seemed like Brady likes to run the ball a little bit more, but I could see them drafting a rookie and getting him more work, or signing one of these veterans that are still out there, just to be annoying enough to 3rd round James Cook. Everybody's going to see what he did at the end of the season. The monster games that won people a ton of money, but he was kind of inconsistent all year. So 3rd round, I'm probably that whole 3rd round, and Henry, ETN, Cook, I probably put them all in the same category. I would put Rachaad White over all 3 of them.
Another guy who Rachaad White, I think, is in this draft at least, is a great value.
Same thing with Pacheco. Pacheco doesn't catch a lot of passes, but he catches enough. I mean, people don't know how good Pacheco was at the end of the season last year. I mean, he was, from the middle of the season on, he was a monster. 20 points, 20 points, 20 points, back. Like, the guy was just killing it. And Mahomes is only going to get better. They got more talent on the outside with Marquise Brown. Kelsey's, I know, getting up there in age, but we don't know what's going on with Rice, but I can't see him getting a really super long suspension. Can't say he's going to be even better this year. So Pacheco, if he stays healthy, he runs a tough style. So that's the worry with him.
He feels like a guy who's always due to get hurt. He's always due. Yeah.
So I would say I think them 3 guys right there are all in the same category. I think after the Kyren Williams, Jacobs, there's a drop off. And to me, Henry, ETN, Cook, White, Pacheco, they're all kind of in the same category to me. All those receivers I like overall.
We've kind of not really beat around the bush. We've mentioned here and there, but the Texans made a massive trade about a week ago.
I would say so. One that nobody saw coming, to them at least.
Stephon Diggs goes to the Texans. That in and of itself, Stephon Diggs leaving the Bills does not shock me in the slightest.
No, not at all.
Dude was becoming
a lot of a concern. You knew it was coming.
Texans, I mean, it wasn't like they probably would have been on the teams. I would have been like, yeah, that makes sense. But for me, from an outsider looking in, it's just an interesting kind of, ingredient to throw into the recipe, shall we say, right? You have a great thing going. There's a little bit of worry on my end. I'd be like, all right, how's that gonna make things work? But that receiving core, Nico Collins, who was a beast last season, Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell, with super sophomore CJ Stroud. How are you ranking those 3 receivers? And then if you could rank those 3 receivers, give your thoughts on that, and also give your thought on, which was even weirder than them turning stuff on Diggs, was going out and aggressively getting Joe Mixon, who is
not a fan of me.
Not
never been a fan.
Not what I would have done. But give me your thoughts on the Texans offense.
But the thing about we'll start with Joe Mixon real quick. Joe Mixon, they went out and aggressively got him, paid him.
Yeah.
So somebody likes him. So you have to look at that as whether you like the guy or not, he's going to get a ton of work. You know, what that work's going to be. I mean, he's probably going to be a 70-30 guy, maybe an 80-20 guy. But I don't know. I mean, I'm just never been. There wasn't a Mixon guy last year. Didn't draft him in many spots. He was actually on, one of my teams who made the championship round, which was very surprising that I did with a partner. He literally had to club me over the head to draft Joe Mixon. I don't think I'll be on him again this year. I mean, but you can't full fade the guy because I don't really see anything behind him as of yet that really is going to make me think that he's going to be, a bust at his ADP. But back to the receivers. My stance on these 3 are going to be real simple. Give me the guy who's the cheapest. Is there anybody I like? It's going to
be Tank Dell.
It would probably be Tank Dell, but, coming off the injury, that's a little worry, but he has that big playability. Nico Collins is probably the guy that I'm probably going to be lower on out of all of them. Love Nico Collins. Liked him a ton last year, had him on a ton of teams last year. But if you look at the Diggs contract, it's pretty much a 1-year deal. When the first trade came out, you were like, oh, man, Texans won this deal. They got him for all, the contract and all this gibbity-yap, but it's really only a 1-year deal. And with a 1-year deal on a player like Diggs, he's going to want the ball. And he is not going to just fade into the thing. He wants to get paid. And this guy is a me guy. He's a great player, but he's a me guy. So when you look at a guy like Diggs, I could see him and Stroud just clicking early, and then Collins is, falling to the wayside. And Dell's going to get his. Dell's a talented kid. We loved him last year. He was one of our guys last year. We drafted all over. And he was a monster all season. Like when he has that big playability that we love in fantasy football. And I don't think that's going to stop. That offense is one of the best offenses, the best receiving core in football. But when you come to fantasy football drafts and when you have to actually start somebody, it could be a little tricky because there's 3 guys that are all very, very talented, and there's only so many balls to go around. So to me, if I'm have to rank them, it would be Dell, Diggs, Collins.
I just want to say we haven't obviously been on air since the first week of September 2023. The dumbest coaching decision by far last year by a great coach in D'Amico Ryans was having Tank Dell coming in and block on the goal line.
I remember being at the bar. It was an Eagles game. Before I went to the game, we were at the bar watching that. I'm just like, you see Tank Dell on the field, you're just like, crap. Like I had him on my team that was number 1 overall, in the best ball tournament going into the playoffs. Had Tank Dell, cheap Tank Dell with all the Stroud, Schultz, every stack you can imagine with that team. And then I'm like, all right, he had a freak injury. It happens, you can be upset. And then I saw what had happened. I'm like, come on, man. Like that stuff, put somebody else in there. Put one of them bums. Throw Michi in there, Schultz in there, one of those guys to block. Keep Tank Dell out of there. That guy has so much talent that
this also doesn't make sense to be blocking with your 5'9", 160-pound receiver. But that's neither here nor there. Hopefully he's healthy
this year. The Texans are, in my opinion, if you could say right now, I think it's not really a bold statement. I think they're the second best team right there with the Ravens in the whole entire AFC on paper.
Bold prediction.
On paper.
Bold prediction. April, 18th we are? 17th?
17th.
Colts are going to win that division.
It's fair, but I don't think Anthony Richardson can stay healthy.
That's the issue. That's
the issue. And I don't think they have enough with him. The thing with the Texans
Flacco.
Is they have Flacco.
Going from Anthony Richardson to Flacco.
If somebody happens to one of those receivers, they got 2 more to throw at you.
Mm-hmm.
The Colts have Michael Pittman and no tight end.
Josh Downs.
Yeah, Josh Downs. I like
Josh Downs. Another guy who we were high on.
Yeah.
He had his moments, but the consistency wasn't there. I do think the consistency will come with him. I think he is.
It all comes down with the Colts. Can Richardson stay healthy? And that's why. I could see the same thing happen that happened last year. He goes on, bursts onto the scene, is a fantasy football QB1, and then just gets hurt, and that's it. That's the thing about him is his style, will worry you the whole time. He's not big like, a Jalen Hurts type of guy. He takes a lot of hits. I mean, the offensive line is very suspect. It's a worry. I mean, Anthony Richardson is definitely a guy that you look at guys that are getting drafted has the QB1 upside. But the injury, he gets nicked up, and he's still not a proven passer. He showed his moments last year, but they're not beating the Texans.
I'm looking so far through 9 rounds, and there's a ton of names that we were all over, right? I mean, Jordan Love, that was you were.
I have a new Jordan Love this year.
Fan club, right?
We're not going to debut it yet, but one of the next couple of shows, I have a new Jordan Love this year.
Okay, so that is
talk about him.
That is the ultimate stay tuned.
We'll talk about the guy.
You were right there, right? I mean,
nobody loved Jordan Love more than me. Balky even told me all the shows we were on together with 3 of us. He didn't even love Jordan Love, but that guy has all the talent. He's always had the talent, and the Packers are wheels up with them. With that offense, with those receivers, that offense is going to be scary in the NFC.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, Zay Flowers. I'm just looking at this draft, and I'm patting us on the back because there's just a lot of names that we largely nailed. But there's one guy who we did not nail. That's Tony Pollard. I said Josh Jacobs, and he probably was the strangest, but I mean, Tony Pollard going to the Titans was right up there with the what? Like,
right when free agency opened, too.
Weird move.
Which is definitely something you have to watch. Like, they wanted him.
Yeah.
Like, they said Tyjae Spears, like, hey, you were cool last year, but, we got rid of Derrick Henry and we wanted Tony Pollard. So that's definitely something you got to watch. Like, where he's getting drafted. He was absolutely hurt last year. There was no explosion. He looked awful last year.
Horrendous.
There was never a time when you had Tony Pollard as your owner, as your player, being an owner, that you ever thought that, hey, he's going to turn it around. Never.
No.
Like, certain guys you look at, you're like, all right, he's going to turn the corner here eventually. Like, you look at some guys who have slow starts. Tony Pollard, you were drawn dead from the first game. You never had a chance with Tony Pollard.
We got to slow down a bit because here's the intriguing thing about Tony Pollard. Well, there's a lot of negatives, but the only positive I'll give you is he's on the record saying, hey, like, I never even felt healthy. I never felt like myself until after week 11. And from week 11 on, he was graded out as one of the better running backs in the league. And I do think you saw a noticeable change in his performance and how he looked after that. He just looked a little better, had a little more get up and go. The issue is the Titans' offensive line was by far and away the worst in the league last year.
It was.
I mean, they are heavily favored to get Joe Alt, although, as you said, Harbaugh could throw a wrench in those plans. I mean, you have a sophomore quarterback in Will Levis. Maybe Pollard can get back more involved in the passing game, more like we saw at points in his Dallas tenure, which was kind of surprised that he wasn't as involved in the passing game in Dallas last year. But is Tony Pollard a guy you're going to be drafting in this kind of – he probably isn't that kind of running back dead zone that's developing already this year, or are you just staying away because there's so many downsides and red flags, but maybe that end of the stretch that he had last year is just enough to maybe pull you back in?
He definitely has some red flags, like you mentioned. The offensive line in Tennessee, very, very suspect. Tyjae Spears is still there, but we got a new coaching staff. There's no more boring Mike Vrabel. I want to take my victory lap on Mike Vrabel. Everybody said what a great coach that guy was, and he's a good leader of men. But the X's and O's, the Titans were always a boring Derrick Henry ran football team. If Derrick Henry didn't win them games, they weren't winning anything. This year, fresh minds, different systems with a new coach. I like Tony Pollard this year. Am I going to be like crazy, taking him like I did last year? No. But like you said, in this dead zone, running backs there where he's getting drafted, he got drafted 7th round. It's a good spot for him if you're going receiver, tight end heavy, quarterback heavy early. He's going to get, like I said, free agency open and they targeted him. He got his money right away. There was no sitting around waiting like Derrick Henry and that kind of stuff. They targeted Tony Pollard. He signed his contract. So they clearly see something in him. I like Will Levis this year. He's definitely a guy I think is going to take the next step. They have plenty of weapons. They have plenty of money that they spent. They're also in the potential for Brock Bowers, which, will make that offense even bigger and better. I still think they need to take an offensive lineman, but Tony Pollard's a guy that I will draft and be very comfortable doing it. Probably more of a best ball pick than a season-long pick, just because you have the Spears, pain in the butt right there. Mm-hmm. But I'll take him in the 7th round if I'm going, receiver crazy early. Absolutely.
Staying on the running backs real quick, from this 8th round on, so Raheem Mostert, Jonathan Brooks, Trey Benson, maybe not all of them, not Austin Eckler, Brian Robinson, Zamir White, Tajay Spears, Zach Moss, Nick Chubb, Chase Brown, Devin Singletary. Pretty much, maybe not Devin Singletary, but pretty much all those names are really intriguing to me. I think Jonathan Brooks is the best running back in the class by far.
I would agree.
But he tore his ACL. So you're probably looking at 2025 being his best year, just historically what we see with coming off of ACL. It really takes some. You could come back, but then
you're a perfect example of a rookie with a gamble.
Yeah.
I mean, 8th round,
The thing with Jonathan Brooks is I get it. He's going to be removed. He's going to play this year. Probably is even going to be ready for week 1, although he is a PUP list.
But you can also see they could put him on the PUP list, and then he's a guy that could help you down the stretch. But it all depends on where he gets drafted at. Like if he could easily get a terrible landing spot and be stuck, or go to a team like Dallas or the Giants that need guys that could be big time fantasy additions. Say week 5, week 6, week 7, whatever. It's just 8th round to me is a little rich for a guy that you don't know if he's going to make it to week 1.
Yeah, and I'm not saying all these picks I love. I'm just saying every name here for the most part is intriguing to me. Trey Benson, probably.
Chase Brown and Zach Moss. I mean, I'm a Chase Brown guy. He's a guy that I put a tweet out a little bit ago. Very, very high on this year. I think you saw enough last year. They pretty much said, Joe Mixon, we don't want you. And they saw enough from Chase Brown that, Zach Moss got a little bit of money, and he's going to be the guy probably a little early, but I think that's Chase Brown's job. And that offense, I mean, you're telling me I can get Chase Brown the 10th round of FFPC drafts? I would be very, very excited about that.
Not to we do the thing where we love comparing players to like, oh, they're going to be like this, even though there's no comparison. But Zach Moss to me feels like historically, right? We all remember Mike Davis and how he shot up to the 6th round at some point. You've seen the history of sometimes these guys, they're career backups. They get thrust into a spot due to injury or the lead running back's out. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor had out. They perform well. These are in a good situation. They kind of get signed to be a lead back, and they just
this year's guy could be Gus Edwards.
Zach Moss, to me, I'm going to trust more what I saw through the first 5 years of his career or 4 years of his career prior than last year, which the Colts was kind of an ideal landing spot for him in the situation. I don't know if the Bengals are that with Chase Brown there, who I think is the more talented, more exciting back. So we'll see. But I'm with you on Chase Brown. Nick Chubb is fascinating, right? How quickly can he get back? Awful leg injury, but
he beats me. He's getting on that list. I'm putting him on. I put Javonte Williams on that list last year, and
then you talked yourself into Javonte Williams, just I
didn't. I talked him into a couple percent.
Okay,
but we're not talking about 15-20% Javonte Williams, and Nick Chubb is going to be on that list this year. If there's anybody that could break that curse of just coming back from horrific injuries, it's Nick Chubb. The guy's a freak. We've all seen the videos of everything, but he still doesn't catch the pass. He still doesn't catch the ball. And you're asking a guy who coming back from just major knee surgery. We're not talking about just a routine ACL. We're talking about just a knee that's pretty much was shot.
Yeah.
And you're saying, hey, I'll pass. If he beats me, he beats me. I'll say that 100 times this year. And I love the player. He's not a guy I've ever like been really, really super high on. And he burned me, you know, especially early in the season. But I'm going to just trust that, yeah, maybe down the stretch, if you can get him later than this, maybe. But his name alone will get him drafted higher than he should. And I'll take chances elsewhere.
Just gets drafted. Makes complete sense as to why. He has no receivers. He's going to be the most run-heavy team in the league. But it's still a little bit jarring to see Justin Herbert go as QB 18 after, since after
crazy.
this season, clear top 8 guy.
Behind Goff, behind, you know, barely above Aaron Rodgers.
Cousins off an Achilles. Tua faded down the stretch. I was ready to do my victory lap on Tua and Tyreek, who I was all over. And Tyreek, he was my first overall pick last year. He was my number 1 overall guy. For the most part, I do think he achieved those. He was wide receiver 1. If
you had Tyreek Hill last year, you were never not happy, no matter what. He didn't deliver at the end. It doesn't matter.
But Tua faded.
Got you in a position to make a lot of money.
That's Dolphins ask for these guys. Dolphins are a really interesting team to draft because to me, and I'll get your opinion on this, but to me, I don't see in the regular season, at least, maybe I'm not as high on Tua because of what I saw last year. And maybe there's a little positive touchdown regression, right? Where he would have so many times that Tua would lead them down to like the 5-yard line and then just Mostert would just gobble up all the touchdowns. But they lost some O-line pieces, which is concerning.
They lost a lot.
They lost a lot, but I have full trust in Mike McDaniel, at least as a regular season coach, that Tyreek's going to put up numbers, that Tua can put up numbers from game to game in a best ball format. I love that stack still for best ball. I'm less on Tua for season long compared to where I was last year. People have mentioned it, but Mostert and A-Chain. A-Chain is another guy. I'm excited to hear that this is the first off season that he was able to put on weight and really prepare for that. He didn't do that last year, but just with his size, there is a concern with the hits.
But about that, I saw a picture just like everybody else saw the picture. Mm-hmm. Look, he put on a lot of weight.
His speed, you can't teach that.
You can't teach that.
That is God given.
There hasn't been many success stories about running backs putting on a ton of weight. Will it take away from his big playability? I hope not, because there's nobody who loves that guy more than me. But looking at these drafts, is Mostert just going to fall off the face of the earth? I get.
That's what I'm saying. So someone in the chat was saying is A-Chain at the 203, I believe he went, and then Mostert at the 801. They had 5 questions.
To me, it's a smash Mostert pick. If you're comparing the two, and I'm not in any way saying A-Chain is not a bad pick, but Mostert just had one of the best seasons a running back's ever had, touchdown wise, points wise. If you had Mostert and Kyren Williams last year, you were where they got drafted. You were just putting money in the bank.
Yeah,
you're telling me I can get Mostert in the 8th round, especially if I'm running back heavy or I'm receiver heavy or tight end heavy. I don't know how it could not work out for you, but you're not risking the capital that you are with A-Chain. So I'm not saying A-Chain's a bad pick. He's a guy that I will take in that spot and be very happy with it. But if you're giving me a gun to my head and you're asking me to pick, Mostert in the 8th round makes a ton of sense.
Mostert obviously was hurt in the fantasy playoff rounds, but was the most owned player, I believe.
Yeah.
Or at least was top 2 on teams that made the the chase, right? They made the.
McDaniel likes to get cute, but he also knows that Mostert was as consistent as they come last year in fantasy football. Forget fantasy football, real life football. You gave Mostert the ball around the goal line, and he got in.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a situation where he's getting stuffed all the time and he left some out there. No, A-Chain has that big playability, and Miami loves the flash, but they showed last year that they also love the boring guy who just get it done, and Mostert got it done and then some. So I think he'll move up eventually. 8th round to me just seems team 12. We keep talking about him, but Very, very good pick for a team that went crazy with receivers and tight end and quarterback early.
Yeah, I mean, we say we don't love Zach Moss, but I do also love, and again, it's tough to do this first one because Terp, I feel like we have so much to talk about and so many guys to discuss. But like Jaylen Warren, shocked that Najee Harris is going ahead of him. Like,
yeah, but you also have the Arthur Smith. I said before the show started that we would not talk about this man. It's the second time that I did. We have the Arthur Smith factor. We don't know with him. You have no clue what you're getting from him. You saw last year he had one of the most talented running backs to ever come out of the draft. They drafted in the top 5 in Bijan Robinson, and they said, hey, we're going to give the ball to Patterson. We're going to give the ball to Algier. We're going to let Desmond Ridder run the ball. And yeah, Bijan Robinson showed his moments, but I could see the third running back in Pittsburgh, whoever that is right now, which it might be Patterson if I think getting the ball over at Harrison and Warren. It's a wild card. Pittsburgh's a team that they have more talent than most people think. You know, I like what they did at the quarterback position. I think Fields is going to be better than Wilson. I think he's going to be the guy eventually, no matter what they try to tell you right now. But Arthur Smith, I don't know, man. Jaylen Warren, love the guy. We loved him last year. We loved him over Najee Harris. And yeah, Najee Harris was good last year too. You know, he wasn't no slouch, especially at the end of the season. But I don't know. Jaylen Warren, 7th round. Arthur Smith, I probably would go elsewhere.
You know what I love to do in these drafts is you're looking at, all right, which basically, because it's going to happen is, all right, which receiver, incoming rookie is going to be drafted by Buffalo and which one is going to go to Kansas City? Because that is,
Kansas City might not need one anymore. So that's the thing is, will they know what's going to happen with Rice before the draft? Probably not. But I could see like everybody wants to put Xavier Worthy with one of those two teams. Everybody wants, that's the dream guy that everybody just with the speed he has and obviously the big playability. That's the guy that everybody wants to go to one of those teams. He's going to get probably overdrafted and probably not get to one of those two teams. But every year we do the same thing. We're like, wow, who's going to land in Buffalo? Who's going to land in Kansas City? Who's going to land with the Chargers? And most of the time, none of them do. Or the guy that we don't want to, the Jalen Polks. You know, guys like that we're like, not crazy about that land there. So that's why Xavier Worthy is the guy, the popular one. But, I mean, there's a lot of names that are right in that range in the rookie class that, man, they would look good in both those teams.
I'm going to – obviously landing spot is everything, but I am irrationally excited to see where Ladd McConkey lands, the 2 Texas receivers, Adonai Mitchell, Xavier Worthy. Troy Franklin, obviously, just who got drafted, and intrigued to see where he goes because another speed demon. Roman Wilson, I think, is going to be undervalued.
One of the best classes you're ever going to see at the receiver position.
Malachi Corley. I mean, it's not all of them are going to pan out. I feel like we've had previous elite receiver classes, but I go back to, they're at the class DK and Depot, 2 second-round picks. That second round and third round is going to be must watch more than even the past couple that I can remember for fantasy purposes, because the amount of receivers and then the running backs are going to start going. And like guys who like are first round talents and they're going to be going in the second round just because I'm sure teams are going to be feel comfortable waiting and not reaching in the first round by product of I know I can get an elite talent, come the second, third round. Adonai Mitchell's the interesting one. Obviously, there's been some reports that came out about his character and stuff, but one of the most talented receivers in the draft. That's a guy, if he gets to Buffalo, if he gets to Kansas City, which I think is possible, that's going to be exciting. There's another guy, Brock Bowers is all the rage, as he should be, but Jatavion Sanders, for me, is another one who's trending to be a second-round pick. But, Kansas City at some point is going to draft that Kelsey replacement, you would think.
You would think, but I don't. Sanders is I like him. He's a talented kid, but I don't think Kansas City is a spot that you want him to go to.
No, I'm kind of rambling. Jatavion Sanders, if we're being honest, is more of a dynasty discussion. I think
there's 2 spots. There's 2 spots that I think will go receiver pretty early in drafts. I think they're extremely underrated from a fantasy perspective. Number 1 is Dallas. There's no more Michael Gallup. CeeDee
like
Lamb's still there. Obviously, Jake Ferguson. Brandon Cooks is getting up there in age. There's no guarantees around him.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to draft one of these young guys, and you saw that offense last year, one of the best offenses in football. Another one is Detroit. No Josh Reynolds. Jameson Williams, they keep trying to talk him up, and he's going to be the guy, and we've all been Jameson Williams supporters, but
he's not. They're not even. I don't even think they're talking him up. They're talking him up as like, hopefully he plays this year if he proves it to us. If anything, what they've been saying about him has made me feel worse and worse about him. That is a guy who's just a complete.
The Jets, the Jags. I mean, you look
the Jaguars. I think that's my pick right now. If I'm doing a mock, I'm sliding Brian Thomas to them.
And another one that is probably the best that nobody's talking about right now because nothing's happened yet. The 49ers. What if they trade Brandon Ayuk?
Cincy has way bigger needs, but there's some teams. But
you look at some of these guys who you mentioned that are a little down the road. They could be third, fourth round picks to get to the third receiver in Cincinnati. Like T. Higgins is a good NFL receiver. I would never put him in the category as great. I could easily see someone of these explosive rookies.
Gonna get a bag next year, though.
He's gonna get a bag, but does he deserve the bag? I don't know. I mean, he has a lot to prove this year. I mean, there's no more Tyler Boyd to take away some of that coverage. He should dominate this year. Mm-hmm. If Burrow is healthy, it should be a Chase and Higgins show. Higgins in the 5th round or the 5th round, I think he went.
Yeah, 5'10".
5'10". Seems like a great value compared to where he's been getting drafted in the past. Nothing's got worse for him. Everything's got better.
I mean, I know it's the same argument that he had, I think, going into this year. Excuse me, last year. I mean, maybe he anticipated the franchise, but he's playing for a contract. And I assume since he is not going to franchise him again, so he's playing to show other teams. So he has a lot on the line. I like T. Higgins. I mean, sometimes I go back to and you look at ADP from previous years and you think, all right, is that guy dropping because he's washed, right? He's dust, as you and me like to say. Is it his situation now sucks? Or is it just he had a rough year and can he get back to that? I mean, T. Higgins was going in that 2-3 turn last year. I think there's a route for him to get back to that level. So that's just a personal opinion. I think that he can get back to that level at some point. So I think early on he's a value, though I could see Cincy investing at least a day 2 pick into a wide receiver. Terp, let's talk about some of the quarterbacks. More specifically, I don't know if your Jordan Love guy's been drafted, but Caleb Williams is a guy who I'm going to be all over. I think he is the real deal. He has that rushing upside. You're not on Caleb. You're not
upside.
You're not a Caleb Williams guy.
I'm not going to sit here and say I'm not a Caleb Williams guy. You're not going to draw up any better of a situation that he's coming into.
Yes.
I'm not a fan of the coaching staff, but
yeah,
he has 2 elite receivers, a solid tight end, Swift, and enough running backs that can make it, work there. They have all the draft capital in the world. It seems like the recipe for success. But my question with him has never been what he can do on the field. It's just, does he have the mental makeup to be the guy, to lead Chicago from the depths of disaster, what they've been in forever, to be that guy? I don't know. And if you're going to ask me, do I think he's going to be the next, people are saying he's the best quarterback to come out since Andrew Luck. I don't know. I don't. In this draft, yeah, he's clearly the number 1 player, but he's coming in the best situation that anybody's ever come into in the NFL. If he can't survive, if he can't do well early on and in year 1, it's definitely a red flag for me. I mean, he's definitely a guy that I'll have plenty of this year. I'm not saying I'm going to fade him or anything like that, but I have more questions than most.
I disagree with you on the mentality part. I think that's completely overblown. I do agree with you.
It? He's never been tested at USC. When did he ever get we saw some of the bad games. Some of the bad games he's played, in big spots.
I think here I'll talk about Caleb Williams quick. One, Caleb Williams is not the most talented prospect since Andrew Luck. I think that gets so overblown. I know it hasn't panned out as we thought. The best prospect since Andrew Luck was Trevor Lawrence, bar none. I mean, coming in that he was a can't miss. He hasn't necessarily delivered on the potential, which really is shocking to me. But to me, I mean, talking about a guy mentality, I mean, it just is what it is. But I mean, I remember the interview that Trevor Lawrence had pre-draft when he was like, "Yeah, football." He essentially like, "Football is just a job to me, like whatever." I remember that being like, "Huh,
And you
that's
can honestly
interesting."
say he's kind of shown it because, like,
Yeah,
he doesn't know if, like, the jury's out on, does he have the mental makeup?
yeah. So put not Trevor Lawrence conversation. Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
He's not the can't miss prospect that he was entering the year. I think this year at USC exposed some flaws. But a lot of those flaws, I think, are due to the struggles that USC had, and he felt he took it upon himself to try and had to be the one man show, which led him into a bunch of situations that he put himself in where he's trying to extend plays or force
Do
things.
you think the Chicago coaching staff will be any better?
That's my biggest issue with Williams is not the mentality, right? It's not him as a player. It really is, can that coaching staff get the best out of him and put him in positions to succeed? I mean, they have legit skill position talent. I mean, Keenan Allen has still got it. I
And
mean, I
they could
understand
easily draft one of these rookies in the first round. Easily.
Romo Dunze. I mean, it would kind of stink for fantasy purposes that if he goes there and he's like the number 3 somewhere, but
But it
that
won't
it
stink for
wouldn't
Caleb
shock me.
Williams.
It would not shock me if one of those receivers falls to 9. It would not shock me if the Bears just loaded, because again, Keenan Allen only has so many years left realistically, and I believe he is a free agent after this year. So it would not shock me. But I mean, I'm just a believer in Caleb Williams, and it's no CJ Stroud. We've seen these rookie quarterbacks come in, and when put in good positions, be highly successful. I mean, even look back at same receiver he had, but Justin Herbert was mighty successful his rookie year once he kind of took over that starting job. I think Caleb Williams, maybe not a can't miss prospect, but he's the most ready for the NFL. He's going to have the best situation, and I think that skill position talent is going to help him thrive and in the best ball format. And I think his rushing stats are depleted because the way college does rushing and they take off for a sec. But look at some of that dude's scrambles. He's going to be able to run, and I'm assuming like they're going to implement some runs for him into the playbook.
You would think so.
But
they didn't do it with Justin Fields, so I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, it is a new OC though.
Yeah, that's fair.
But they really should have fired Eberflus. I know they were good down the stretch, but they really should have just started.
It just made so much sense to start over.
But that's a little worrisome. Oh, I love the Ray Davis pick. But so you're iffy on Caleb Williams. It sounds like you're going to take him. You're not like off of him. I know you're a good friend. He'll probably be on our show at some point. Theo Greminger's all over. At least last check. Jaden Daniels. Are you the same?
Same way.
Okay. Talk to me about Jaden Daniels.
His rushing upside is so high. Obviously, the worry with him is he goes to New England, and I'm still going back to the New England thing. I just think there's certain teams this year that are complete disasters for fantasy football, New England being one of them. And I would prefer, if all things considered, I keep hearing the rumblings of him going to the Commanders. Mm-hmm. That's best case scenario. They have the talent on the outside. You know, he had plenty of talent at LSU. You saw him just break onto the scene and just put up video game numbers. He has to put on some weight. That's definitely something that he's got to be able to take the hits in the NFL. It could be a situation. Obviously, he's a little smaller than Anthony Richardson, but the NFL is no joke. These linebackers ain't going to run around you. They're going to run through you. So the injury concerns there, but with the rushing upside, sky high, he's probably my favorite quarterback, all things considered, in this draft. It's him and Caleb Williams to me. I think after that, there's a little bit of drop off. But I agree with Theo. Wheels up on Jaden Daniels.
I think we probably passed the rumbling stage, right? I mean, he's a heavy. I do trust Vegas more than anyone else in the sign, and Daniels is a pretty heavy favorite to go.
He is.
For Washington.
He is. Drake May. Question of Vegas sometimes have to play tricks on you, and I hope not, because it's best case scenario, all things considered, for what we love to do, play fantasy football and just overall football. But we'll see.
The thing with Jaden Daniels that worries me is we like to talk about, and Dom put in the chat that Caleb Williams going to have a rude awakening because he won't have as much time in the pocket. And my response is the reason he was scrambling and trying to just make is because people weren't getting open. So he was trying to force it. Theoretically, with DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, Keenan Allen, maybe Rome Odunze, he shouldn't need that much time. Like, guys are going to be open. Jaden Daniels, if we want to talk about putting themselves in bad positions, as great as he was, I mean, great player, some moronic decisions. Like, he's jumping into the first game, everyone's seen it, but that Florida State game, and he is trying to hurdle over like 4 defenders and gets.
You ain't doing that in the NFL. That's the thing about it. He needs to get a good OC that settles him down. Let him do what he does best, but you can't be trying to be Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen day one with that body frame.
Yeah,
you will
that's
run
what
over and run out of the league real quick.
That's what worries me about him. Honestly, though, the thing about Daniels, let's say whoever goes to New England is just fantasy wasteland. Got to be some concerns there about development as well. But I'm still holding on to Drake May as my QB2, not in fantasy, just like going NFL draft. I still do like him, although I do think he has more work than maybe I initially expected, especially after his first year at North Carolina.
Yeah, his tape wasn't great last year.
It wasn't great, but I do think still I love the tools way more that he possesses over Jaden Daniels. But I saw the quote that I think a scout said. He goes, if we draft Drake May, he may get there, but by the time he gets there, I'm not going to be there. I'm going to be fired.
Which is fair.
So that's the Drake May. But I don't even know where I was going with this. Oh, I was saying Jaden Daniels, he goes to the Commanders. Obviously, the rushing upside is massive. Not a terrible receiving core to go to. I mean, it's not what Caleb Williams is entering, but I mean, you have Terry McLaurin, you have Jahan Dotson. You know, that's not a bad. I mean, Brian Robinson's a running back who can handle a big workload. That's not an awful landing spot.
Austin Eckler's still there. I mean,
Austin Eckler's a commander.
It's crazy. God. But we're going to go back to what I said earlier about the Jordan Love. He just got drafted a little bit ago. The quarterback,
Will Levis, my guy.
Will Levis.
Let's go. I love that.
Big fan of Will Levis this year. I mean, Jordan Love was free in drafts at this point last year. He was pretty much free no matter what. I just think everybody's going to get scared away from Levis because Vrabel and Henry and everything of the past. Well, the past isn't there anymore. They went out, spent big money on Calvin Ridley. Hopkins is still there. You know, the corpse of Treylon Burks is still around. If they draft, Brock Bowers, which is a possibility, they have running backs that are quick, not just pluggers anymore like Henry was, a very good plugger, but still they have a brand new coaching staff who, has been successful, running an offense. Wheels up on Will Levis this year. I like what I saw last year in the small sample size. And, not the biggest Calvin Ridley fan, wish they would have spent money somewhere else, but still, it shows you that they believe in his ability. And to me, where he's getting drafted, he has Jordan Love potential this year.
Another thing, we're in the never too early best ball tournament. We say this every year, I think. You're not choosing, you're not, do I start Will Levis this week? He's going to be streaky. That's what he was last year. But for best ball, he's going to have weeks, especially in this 15th round. He's going to his QB 24. That's a guy who's going to give you some great weeks. And I'm sure you can get some, as you said, some relatively cheaper stacks with him. I mean, as you look here, Team 8 was able to stack Ridley and Levis together in that kind of with a 7th-round investment.
Pretty much.
Not free, but yeah, it's not.
You're not spending the capital that you're spending on the Mahomes Kelce's or the Hurts Browns or the guys like that.
For sure. I mean, yeah. So that I'm with you. I mean, if you're gonna give me a Kentucky guy and say that you're gonna ride him, I mean, what am I gonna? I'm not gonna say no. I'm gonna support my guys.
I know that would torque you up too when I brought a Kentucky guy up.
I'm gonna be honest though. Will Levis, I put on my neutral hat last year. I was not a Levis fan entering the draft. I know the offensive line that he had at Kentucky was awful, but I just thought he showed so much inconsistency. I didn't know if he would be able to piece it together. Granted, at that time, though, he also was being projected as a top 10 pick. Honestly, where he settled in was, I feel that early second is about right. And he was way better than I thought in Tennessee. He had some really good games. Terp, you got asked in the chat very early on. We ranked the Texans receivers.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's asking us, speaking of Jordan Love, rank those Green Bay receivers. Jayden Reed won someone $1 million. Who would have thought that? I think we talked about Jayden Reed at times, especially with Balky. We had
plenty of Jayden Reed shares. There's not a shortage.
We like Jayden Reed, right? As a if we're considered our live draft coverage show, we were a Jayden Reed. We liked his value, but I don't think I ever anticipated him being the guy to win someone $1 million in the main event, and he did. Christian Watson, there was a couple. I mean, let's be real. Awful year was one of behind Pollard was UMI's biggest disappointment for guys we were on. It's really the injury
disappointment.
It's his at least. I mean, Pollard you could argue maybe was too, but Watson was just he was hurt. The hamstring. He would come back. He couldn't get involved. He had his moments a little down the stretch.
But the hamstring at the end of the day is going to be his crutch all around.
They're sending him for advanced tests to try and figure out what's wrong. But who knows what's there? Romeo Doubs is still there. Dontavian Wicks. So rank. Let's ask you. I'm delaying the question. What's your answer? Rank those Green Bay receivers for the
Jayden Reed number one. I think that's clear right now.
Yep. After
that is where it gets a little tricky. To me, I'm still sticking with Christian Watson as number two. If he can figure out this hamstring issue, which is a big, it's hampered him his whole career.
Yeah, since
we've seen the flashes. It's Watson number two, Wicks number three, Romeo Doubs number four. Romeo Doubs.
Romeo Doubs seems to be settling in as a better,
to me, he's a
real life player.
Tyler Boyd.
Okay, yeah, he's a better real life player than fantasy in terms of what he brings to the team.
You saw it in the playoffs. He had his moments, but is he ever going to be somebody that you're gonna draft and be excited about in fantasy football? No. Is he ever going to be somebody that even if he's boring is ever going to be like somebody you're going to start? No. So to me, it's just find somebody else that you can draft.
I just want to say, early on, if there's going to be some guys who I'm pounding my fist on the table for, it was Tank Dell and Josh Downs last year.
Mm-hmm.
It's Roman Wilson this year.
I know you're a Roman Wilson guy. I like him too.
I think Roman Wilson was just a guy. He would be a lock first round pick if he was just in a little bit more of if he wasn't on Michigan last year. Michigan just ran the ball.
My favorite receiver. I'm probably going to butcher his last name. I want to try it. Outside of the top guys is the guy from Florida, Ricky Pearsall.
Yeah,
I got it right the first time. Yeah. My favorite by a good margin. Love the guy. Wheels up. To me, he's going to go in the second round. I would love to see him go in one of those best spots. Behind the top 3 to 5 guys, I would put him right up there.
I talked about trying to figure out who the Bills or Chiefs are going to get is fantastic, right? That's all fun and games. What's not fun and games, and maybe they have a resurgence, is who the Panthers are going to take at 33, because more than likely that's going to be a receiver, because that's a glaring need for them, and in such a loaded class, they could even trade
glaring up. Need, but you also look at that offense, they just added Deontay Johnson, which people forget about. He's going to get peppered with 1 million targets. I don't know if they're good targets, bad targets, what targets they are, but I like the offensive coordinator that they hired for Tampa Bay. That makes a ton of sense. He turned Baker Mayfield around, and that offense was definitely something to watch. But
what does Canales like do? I'm going to butcher his name, but what does he love to do? He loves to run the ball.
He does.
I think that's part of the little bit of why Rachaad White is a little bit tempered expectations. Is who knows what.
But could Chuba Hubbard be that guy where he's getting drafted in drafts? It's cheap, but there's another rookie landing spot that could be a good one. They could add it, a veteran just to be annoying. But Chuba Hubbard's definitely a guy that could easily be the guy, and could be a guy that is a value, especially early on. I think he'll move up if they don't do anything crazy in the draft, because this running back class in the draft is just very average.
The Panthers are just a weird one, and I know one of the Lad McConkeys, Roman Wilson's. It seems as though, by all accounts, it's going to be one of those elite route runners, maybe rather than just a jump ball kind of guy, a physical freak. It's going to be one of the elite route runners, as I said. So that concerns me a bit, but no, I'm going to be in on Roman Wilson for a while. I wanted to ask you, there was a question in the chat. It's a good question. I'm just intrigued to see your opinion. where do you see the quarterbacks landing at? Let's say we go 1, 2, 3. Let's say Caleb Williams to the Bears, Jaden Daniels to the Commanders, Drake May to the Patriots. Where does the other 3 go? I'm going to go with Penix, Nix, and then obviously JJ McCarthy.
I mean,
do any
JJ
of them have?
McCarthy's going to find a way to get pushed up. I mean, I'm out on JJ McCarthy.
I can't see it either.
So many people are like, yeah, and I'm not there. I'm not one of them. I think there's just after those top 3, just a massive drop off. I don't think there's really anybody that I really like a lot. People are going to talk about, Michael Penix and, and how, talented of a kid he is and how he can run an offense and how good he was at his pro day. But he also has 2 major injuries and he's getting up there in age. So to me,
and he was not great under pressure at the best offensive line.
He had literally the nut spot with receivers, 3 of the most talented receivers in college football. And Michigan just beat the crap out of him in the playoff. So I'm out on him too. I mean, if there's a quarterback that I like a little bit, it would be Spencer Rattler, but not anybody that I'm like pounding the table for. So after those top 3, I think it's just yuck. McCarthy's probably best spots. Minnesota making a trade or the Giants possibly to keep their chatter there. But yeah, none of these quarterbacks really excite me. Bo Nix, I mean,
Yeah, it's going to be funny to me. Again, a lot of people were iffy on Will Levis going into last year. Then he had that surprising fall, but maybe it should have made sense. Like maybe it was not rare time, but it was one of those cases where the NFL minds were kind of in line with what a lot of the public perception was. With the guy has talent, but
I don't think we're going to get that lucky with JJ McCarthy.
I'm talking about Bo Nix is getting, or Penix are often getting mocked to Raiders at 13, Broncos at 12. It just
I don't see it.
Would be crazy to me. I'm just also looking. I know we've mentioned it multiple times. I'm going to mention it probably. Actually, I mean, some of them are probably going to go to crappy spots, and I'm going to temper my expectations. But right now, with these possibilities are limitless, seeing some of these rookie receivers pop up is so exciting. Like it's just Jalen Polk is really good. Hasn't been even drafted. Javon Baker, the UCF receiver. I'm not even going to pretend as if that was me. That's guys who are way smarter than me in the fantasy world. They're all over his metrics. There's just so many.
Malachi. You also look at, like, we're talking about the rookie receivers. You also look in the 16th round, Brandon Cooks. Like that's to me a ridiculously good pick. Like, is Brandon Cooks the greatest receiver in the world? But in the 16th round in that offense with no rookie, and even if they draft one, like, there's still questions there. It's not just it's not like the running back position where you can find somebody up the streets. Receivers are a lot more, you got to prove something to be out there. You don't find many guys that are just at no names. So that to me is a very, very good pick. Zay Jones, injured last year a bunch. Another pick that, we all talk about the flash of the rookies and all that stuff, but like 17th round Zay Jones with questions on Gabe Davis, no Calvin Ridley, we saw what he did 2 years ago. He was a fantasy football, monster. To me, if you look at all the receivers getting drafted here, Zay Jones and Brandon Cooks stand out to me.
The looking kind of out this late, there's some good value. I mean, Darnell Mooney has done nothing the last 2 years.
Nothing. But
that butt is a big butt, right? That's a nice landing spot.
Very nice landing
Kirk
spot.
Cousins, I believe,
would have been better, but still very nice landing spot.
Kirk Cousins is the most accurate deep ball quarterback over the last couple of years. I mean, Mooney's a guy who, for best ball, I would be all over in the 15th.
100%. And another guy who's getting drafted right around this range we're talking about, Michael Wilson. Total guy who was just ignored and then, came on, late in the drafting season last year. People were all hyped up on him.
Yep.
And then, he didn't have a bad year, but this year, let's just hypothetically say they trade out of that pick and they don't get one of these top receivers. It's in the range of possibilities, not likely, but still.
Oh, I think it's very possible.
Then? Yeah. Michael Wilson would be a number 1 receiver with Kyler Murray, who's fully healthy, another quarterback who you have to love where he's getting drafted. And I've never been a Kyler Murray, supporter in the past. This year, that's changed because it's all about where he's getting drafted. And a bad team, in my opinion, that will be a very bad team, he's still going to be chucking the ball a ton, and he presents that rushing upside.
Yeah.
So if they get Harrison and Michael Wilson, Trey McBride, you know how much I love that guy. That offense looks a lot better than most people will look at.
For as maybe poor as a team as they may be projected, I have a lot of trust in that front office, who 1 year in has proven themselves to be, I think, largely a very, solid and competent. I mean, they had a great draft last year in terms of kind of moving through all their picks, gaining more assets. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned McBride. We're not going to talk about it. We'll save that for a later show, but it is kind of cool. We finally are seeing that changing of the tight end guard this year, especially obviously for those who don't know, who may be watching, not aware of the FFPC. Obviously, FFPC is your home to high stakes fantasy football, but obviously kind of the unique twist for some who don't know is here at the FFPC, we have it's PPR, full point PPR. Tight ends are it's tight end premium, so 1.5 point PPR for tight ends. But I mean, for years it's been Kelsey, Andrews, Kittle. You're finally, I mean, the new blood last year was great. You're Kincaid, McBride, and Laporta, of course. So that's kind of unique. We'll talk about that at a later date. Looking around, I'm just kind of keep bouncing around throughout this draft. Another name, rookie-wise, there's competing trains of thoughts on him, but Bucky Irving out of Oregon, on one side, his college stats are very much predictive of going to be a really successful fantasy running back. On the other side, a lot of his athletic traits and testing is indicative of a real potential for lack of success in the NFL. But that's another guy. He goes here in the 15th round that I'm just going to buy that what he showed in college and kind of the stats there are going to pan out. Because a lot of these running backs I do think are going to fall into good spots when it's all said and done. Obviously, the Cowboys at 56, I believe, is the big hinge spot. It's 2024. It's 2024. It's 2024, and he's still getting drafted. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is getting drafted.
Nobody loves Clyde Edwards-Helaire more than you.
This is crazy.
This is, if you really want to see, like, I looked at this draft. It's the first draft I really looked at in a long time. But if you look at this draft, like, there's a lot of, like, the names look better to your eyes. But now you're looking at this running back 18, 19, 20. This is some ugly, ugly guys.
The running backs are rough.
A.J. Dillon, Zeke.
Like, the receivers are unreal. The receivers, we're in a place right now with the receivers where they haven't maybe landed in those spots that are just going to completely quell their value, or the guys who we're high on and then they drop to the 4th or 5th round. You're like, really? And they just don't work out. The running backs have
Miles Sanders, like
Miles Sanders getting drafted.
Deonta Foreman, like
I'm just going to say, I don't know what the injury thing is. I'm assuming he's going to be a pup candidate for how long. I know Derrick Henry's there, but I will be drafting Keaton Mitchell. Like, of all the names in this spot, taking out the rookies who, we'll see where they land, of these kind of guys who have already established themselves, the J.K. Dobbins, Clyde, Tank, Zeke, A.J. Dillon, all of them are gross. Keaton Mitchell is not. Keaton Mitchell is legit, and I think he would pair really well with Derrick Henry for a stretch run in best ball.
But Tank is a guy that I didn't like last year. Got caught up in like the I didn't like him last year at all. I was always an ETN
and
guy.
You were right.
Caught up in the just idiot. Like, too many guys talked about ETN in a bad way. That I caught up and drafted more Bigsby than I should have. And at the end of the day, it cost me a ton because Bigsby was useless. But if they don't draft a running back, he's still there. And we know that the coaching staff doesn't love ETN. So if he improves year 2, it's potential. And in the 18th round, I'll take Tank Bigsby over Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Elliott, Dillon, Deonta Foreman, dust buckets like that.
19th round, I agree with you in that he is someone who, like, in this format, you may as well take a risk because the coaching staff has, I do think it is coach speak. I think they add someone in the draft. I think I have a hard time believing, as bad as he was, they roll him back out, because it wasn't just normal. Like, he was statistically, I believe, one of the, if not the worst running back with like a certain number of carries last year. Like, he was bad. I don't think they're going to roll him out. But let's say they don't. Doug Peterson maybe shows he invested in him. Obviously, maybe they do try and continue to see what they got there, and maybe he can improve. As you said, I don't think that's a bad investment this late. I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is...
It's crazy if you look at just 3 names in a row, or not really in a row. Dameon Pierce, who was top 8-round pick last year.
Brutal. The Damian Pierce one-hit wonder is going to go down.
Rashad Bateman, another name that was just ridiculously up there. Who was awful. Jonathan Mingo, who was the popular breakout rookie that we all loved last year, including myself. Was it his fault?
Yes.
Most of the coaching staff and everything around it.
I think it was Jonathan Mingo was also. Jonathan Mingo probably had one of my favorite plays, like video clips of the year. Did you remember that play where he caught the ball and it was as though he was trying to play like the game he played as good, like the floor is lava. He did everything in his power to not stay in bounds. It was the craziest thing. Like he leaps up to catch it, no defenders around him, acres of space on the sideline. He like dives out of bounds to make it a non-catch. Funniest thing. Anyway,
the talent's still there. It's just, does Bryce Young improve in year 2? Does the coaching staff put Bryce Young in position to improve in year 2? There's a lot of questions in Carolina.
I'm assuming they draft someone, right? I think
I would expect Bryce Young on a rookie contract. You try to get him as many options.
Deontay Johnson is now there.
Last year,
Thielen is still there. Yeah, they were bad. Theo Johnson, by the way, I don't know if this is a long-term thing. A guy I love. I like his athletic profile. I think at Penn State, it's just not a program where I'm going to judge pass catchers because Drew Aller was terrible and the coaching staff isn't great. Theo Johnson is a rookie tight end. I talked about Ja'Tavion Sanders. Again, I might be just going a little too far, and this isn't maybe a 2024 best ball conversation, but Theo Johnson, Ja'Tavion Sanders, 2 late-round dart throws, because depending on the landing spot, I think they could really overperform where they're currently getting drafted. Frank Gore Jr., does that make you feel old?
Really old, man. I just turned 40.
Marvin Harrison and Frank Gore Jr.
Really old. And guys like Jeff Wilson still getting drafted. I feel like Jeff Wilson's been in the league for 35 years. And he's probably only been in the league for like 5.
Where the hell are you seeing Jeff Wilson?
Johnny Wilson. Sorry, my eyes.
Jeff Wilson.
That is a name, though. Jeez. Johnny Wilson. He shouldn't be getting drafted. Sorry.
No, yeah, I mean, we're in kind of our late round. Any other names here that we haven't? Again, we're going to touch on pretty much all of these names. We're going to wind down. We're in the final round here. We thank everyone who tuned in across Twitter, across YouTube. We had over 200 of you popped in to watch, which we appreciate. And we know it's only going to grow. It's only April. Honestly, as me and Terp were saying, we do it for you guys who are crazy enough to come watch in the middle of April before even the NFL draft has occurred to come watch his fantasy draft. But Terp, I want you, any guy who's been drafted that we didn't talk about, maybe in the second half of the draft, is there any guy you want to touch on?
Looking real quick. I mean, I couldn't picture a worse landing spot for Jerry Jeudy. Totally off him.
I'll give you a name that I'm going to be in on again, and I'll probably be in on to wit's end. Awful kind of spot, was hurt all last year. I'm still a believer in Kendre Miller's talent.
I agree there.
Alvin Kamara, I think.
Kamara getting up there.
Yep.
Wear and tear, showing a little, slowing down. Another name that kind of burst on the scene last year, but also was a little, it's a tough situation with Derek Carr is Shaheed. I mean, it's definitely a name that I like. No Michael Thomas anymore. Chris Olave is still the guy, but he wasn't as dominant as most people thought he was going to be last year. Carr had that relationship with Shaheed, so he's definitely a name that where he's getting drafted as a guy that, especially in best ball, he has a big playability. I mean, you're seeing some names get drafted here. Bellinger and Will Dissey. I mean, Jesus. This is the dark stages of the draft, man.
I mean, it's April and we're covering a 20-round fantasy draft. What do you expect? I forgot. There was one other name I was going to bring up, but it slipped my mind. Quentin Johnson. I guess he technically is like one of the only receivers. I mean, and is something like this, are you pushing Josh Palmer up a little more?
I'll push Josh Palmer up more than Quentin Johnson.
Johnson is.
I'm not going to sit here. I'm going to full fade Quentin Johnson because if they don't have anybody,
you can
get passes, but.
You can full fade that dude. I mean, he
was so bad last year.
We had said that.
He's another guy from day one. Didn't got caught up a little bit in it, and
I know who I was going to say. 20th round. I'm going to say this. One of Darnell Mooney or Rondale Moore is going to have a really good fantasy year.
I agree.
Which is crazy because I did my whole, you should be hesitant on the Falcons. Don't do it. But one of those guys is, at least in best ball, I am confidently drafting in the last 5 rounds.
I totally agree.
To everyone who tuned in, as I said, thank you. You guys are psychos in the best way for watching this. This was the Never Too Early Best Ball Tournament. That contest is actually sold out now, but fear not. The Best Ball Tournament and Superflex Best Ball Tournament over at the FFPC, home to the $300,000 grand prize in the Best Ball Tournament, $100,000 grand prize in the Superflex. Those are both been increased from last year. Signups are now open for that.
Big money.
Those drafts will start on Sunday, April 28th, so after the NFL draft. If you're trying to get a drafting fix, you can play in the Fantasy Pros Championship, which is home to $1 million grand prize. Keep in mind there is an early bird promo running as long as you register by June 15th, draft by June 30th. You'll get a free $35 league credit. You can get up to 3 credits. And then obviously the FFPC main event signups are now open for that. You're running kind of the early bird promo there as well. You can get $100 off your first team when you sign up by May 31st. That's going to do it for myself. Dave Terpoilli will be back probably in the next couple of weeks or so. We're kind of going to ease into it right as drafting coverage, but we'll be back in a couple of weeks. And then at the end of May is the Fantasy Pros Hardway draft featuring some of the top players who play on the FFPC, some experts that you know who will surely be joining us. So that's at the end of the month. We're probably going to have one more in between that. So look out for us there. Start drafting, might as well. We'll be back for our next draft coverage in a couple of weeks. Thanks, guys.
See you guys.